So for folks who know me, I am here tonight helping with the Brandeis Summer of Opportunity program, which is a program that's designed to help people turn their dream or their side hustle for free through this program into a viable business. For folks who we've never met, my name's Christina Inge, and I'm the founder and CEO of ThoughtLight. We're a digital marketing agency based out of Boston, where we have been in business for 6 years. We have worked with everything from Fortune 500 companies. For instance, the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year program, Brandeis University, as well as small individual companies in terms of finding their ideal product market fit, as well as building the digital infrastructure to reach the audience that they need. In my copious spare time that I don't actually have, I teach a program on customer discovery and the business model canvas and empathy-driven design at Harvard University's Division of Continuing Education in the master's degree program, as well as being the curriculum consultant and professor of practice in the Northeastern College of Professional Studies Communications master's degree program. I don't know where I find this time, but I do know that entrepreneurship is exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. And one of the most challenging parts of entrepreneurship is finding your first customers or finding new customers for a new business venture, like a new product line that some of you guys are launching right now. And so your first customers really are the people who are going to help you win, but they're different from your other customers. So there's specific characteristics for those first customers that make them very, very different from subsequent customers. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you really don't need to worry about those subsequent customers too much at the beginning, because you need to keep the lights on. You need to get those first customers so that your business proves to be viable. And absolutely, there's still venture capital out there, there's still angel and seed funding out there, but not all of us are candidates for that. I certainly was not starting a marketing agency. Nobody gives venture funding to that. Certainly, people don't give funding to a lot of consulting firms. So you need to get those first paying customers. So who are they? Where are they? And how are you going to connect with them? So product management and product development are actually how you're going to get your first customers. So if you think to yourself, I am not a marketer, I don't know how to get my first customers, if it's all about branding, positioning, and advertising, you don't need any of that at the beginning. In fact, if anything, investing too heavily in a fancy brand when you have no customers or you're a very early stage startup or consulting firm is the wrong way around. And certainly there is a talk that I give on how to do the right kind of branding on a shoestring, like logos and building a website on a shoestring. And I'm happy to do a session on that. But at the end of the day, what you really need to build your first customers is the skill set you already have, which is your product management and your product development skill set. So what do I mean by that? So there was some wonderful research done around the middle of the 20th century by Everett Rogers around the diffusion of innovations. And what Everett Rogers found, who was a social scientist, was that there's distinct categories of consumers in every market, and they follow a normal distribution curve regardless of the market. There's about 2.5% of the market who are innovators, and those are the people who are at the cutting edge and who are willing to take high risks in order to get high rewards in trying innovative products or services, or an unproven consultant. They're followed by early adopters, who constitute about 13.5% of pretty much every market there is out there. And those folks wait to see what the innovators have done. They're not ready to jump in with the very first product that comes out there in a market. They weren't the first people who had a smartphone, for instance. They're not going to be the absolute first customers who sign up with you, but they are people who are willing to try something new and different. Then you've got the early majority, and those are people who are a bit more conservative. They're not about to try something on the cutting edge, but nor are they going to wait until something's super popular and about to really become mainstream to try a product. but they're willing to, they're going to wait and see a little bit, but they're not, again, going to wait until everybody has to have a product in order to survive. They're not going to be the people who didn't get a smartphone until virtually everyone had a smartphone. They would be in the first half of those people. Then you've got the late majority. Those are the people who wait and see until something has totally caught on and becomes a necessity of everyday life before they purchase a product. Now, for a services company, those are going to be the folks who don't sign up with you until you've really caught on and you have great word of mouth and people are saying, oh, we have to hire Laura, you have to hire Christina, you have to hire Hannah, and you've got good word of mouth, and they're not going to take a chance on you based on a few case studies or a little bit of information about you. They'll wait till you're established and well known. For a product, they'll wait until a lot of people have tried the product and spoken to them about it. And then you've got your laggards. And your laggards are people who may never adopt a product or service, or if they do, it's once it becomes an absolute necessity. Now, for a services firm, you're probably never going to get the laggards, because in order for people to sign up as laggards, it has to be a product that people have to have, or else it's difficult for them to survive, like in the case of the smartphone. So one of the challenges with getting products to market or services to market is that there's a significant difference between the people here in this pink area, the innovators and the early adopters, and the rest of the market. And that's typically called the chasm. And one of the challenges for a new product is that they might do well with their innovators and their early adopters, but then they don't actually transition into being interesting to the early majority. And that's what's called failing to cross the chasm. There's a really wonderful book called Crossing the Chasm that talks about this phenomenon, which means that you're very popular with people on the cutting edge, but you remain a niche product only with those people and you don't become popular. Now, when you're starting a niche company, one of the things I want to talk about is the fact that you don't necessarily have to cross the chasm. You can stay with that niche of people who really get you, who really get your product, who really get your service. It all depends on how big you want to grow your company. But on the other hand, if you have a product that could achieve mainstream interest, you do want to figure out how to cross the chasm by having a product that is popular enough and has enough features that it's going to interest enough people. But right now, you're well before the chasm. You're talking to innovators and early adopters, and you may stay there if you're a service company. So what you want to do is both customer discovery and customer development. And the customer development process emphasizes learning, discovery, failure, iterations, and pivots. In other words, right now, to get customers, you need to be willing to keep an open mind as to what it is that your customers really want or need from you. So first you're going to define your product, and that can be your service in a product brief. And that's going to outline exactly what it is your product or service does. And then you're going to test it with customers in a process called customer discovery. And what customer discovery is you talk to a select group of people. It could be 15, it could be 20, it could be 100. And you run your idea for a product by them, and you ask them to give their honest and unvarnished feedback about what it is about the product that they particularly like, or what would make them wish to purchase it. And remember, when I say product, I also mean service, but for the interest of time, I'm just going to say product. And you want to get them to give you feedback as to whether they would pay for your product, and if not, what would make them pay for it and how much they would pay for it. Don't get too committed at the stage of launching your idea to your idea itself. I want to share with you a really honest story about when I started my own company, ThoughtLight. We were originally going to be a training company that was going to teach people how to do digital marketing. I got a lot of feedback from a handful of early customers that was absolutely what they needed. They needed somebody to teach them how to do digital marketing. They needed to learn this stuff, and they really wanted to learn it from me because they had been to one of these workshops and they wanted to learn my methods for doing digital marketing. But here's the thing, what's going on with these workshops? They're free. And so what we found out is, of course, people wanted to come to my free workshops, but they were not willing to pay for it because everybody in digital marketing is doing free workshops. And so, yes, people were interested in the training, but they were not willing to pay for it. But they would come to the training and then they would ask me and my team to do the marketing themselves because they would realize that digital marketing is not as easy as it sounds. And so if I had been too committed to the idea of being a training company, I would have felt let down. But I was testing with customers, and that early verbal feedback was great, but I didn't ask because at the time, 6 years ago, I thought I didn't need to deal with customer discovery and do it the right way. I was going to do it my own way. And so I didn't really ask people how much they would pay for it. And even when I did, they honestly thought they were willing to pay something for it, maybe $200. But at the end of the day, they weren't really willing to pay for it because too much is out there for free in this market. So yes, you want to test your product idea with customers by getting that verbal feedback as part of a customer discovery process, but still don't get too committed because at the end of the day, people saying they're going to pay for your product is not the same as them actually paying for your product. The only way you're going to get real market feedback is by launching an MVP, a minimum viable product. And that is a very minimal feature set. Don't get too invested. If I had launched 10 different courses, all of them online with professionally shot video, I would have sunk a lot of money into an idea that didn't fly. Instead, we created just minimal webinars on Zoom like you're seeing right now. We didn't put a lot of production value into it. It was all about the content. And so that way we could work backwards from the customer problem and think about what's the simplest way to solve our customer's problem. Turned out their problem was not, I need more webinars. Their problem was, I need better digital marketing. And the simplest way to solve that for the customer was to actually give them digital marketing and do it for them. So what you want to do to get your first customers is honestly create a minimal feature set, ask people for their feedback around your product concept and your idea, but then launch it. Launch that MVP. Follow the lean startup methodology of Eric Ries. I highly recommend that book if you haven't read it already. And then see what people will actually pay you for. Because what they say they might pay you for might be different from what they will really pay you for. And what you want in order to get customers is to solve a customer's problem that they're willing to pay for. In the immortal words of Steve Blank, you're not solving for a customer pain point. A pain point is something people will not really end up paying for if there's a free alternative, in my experience. What you're solving for is a pain point so bad, and I'm paraphrasing here, that it's a bleeding head wound. And that phrase, bleeding head wound, has stayed with me, and it's stayed with most of my students throughout their careers as well, is that you're really looking for a problem so bad that people are willing to pay a reasonable amount of money to solve it. So what you want to do is engage in some open-minded analysis. You want to identify each job function or each stakeholder who interacts with a problem, experiences it, witnesses it, or otherwise understands it. Don't just think that your customer is maybe the CMO, the chief marketing officer, or the junior level digital marketing person within your organization in our case. Work separately with a multitude of different stakeholders who touch on the problem and make sure that you get feedback from every single one of them. The other thing that we find helpful if you're launching a product like a software platform or an app or a physical product is to do user experience research. And this goes beyond customer discovery to actually do a set of behaviors that are more common to user experience design, and that is to job shadow somebody who is in your target audience for a day, a week, however long you're able to work with them, and watch them work, and then interview them in a debrief one-on-one, as well as observing them. So you identify as much data as you can about the problem, because again, what people told us their problem was not ultimately the problem that they really had. The problem that they really had was not a lack of digital marketing education. It was a lack of digital marketing that worked. And so by working side by side with people, going on site with them, talking to them, observing what they're really doing versus just what they're really saying, you can get a lot of insight into what's the real problem that you're solving, what's the real set of jobs to be done that you can provide a solution for. Because again, People will tell you one thing, but what the market will tell you is the true arbiter. So a couple of ways of otherwise identifying who your real customers are is knowing what types of needs there are. And this is an area where I see a lot of founders make the wrong move. So I want to spare you from making those wrong moves by sharing the real types of needs that there are in the marketplace and how you can be realistic about what they are. Because it's in being realistic about what kind of need you meet that you're able to figure out whether you have a product that you can market. So the first is the latent need, and that's where the customer is unaware that they have a problem. Many needs have been quote unquote created by marketing, but it's never an easy path. So if when you're interviewing potential customers, they're not aware that they have a problem, you're facing an uphill battle, and I will suggest to you frankly that you find a problem that people know they have. And I know that there have been groundbreaking breakthrough products that people didn't know that they needed, but that's actually quite rare. So for instance, of course, we have the smartphone. People didn't know that they needed a computer in their pocket. Of course, I have props whenever I give this talk. We have this wonderful IKEA lamp in the shape of a set of mushrooms. I didn't know I needed this until I was walking around IKEA, but you know what? I also only paid $2 for this. So a latent need is actually very hard to create a market around. If you're IKEA, you're actually meeting the active need of people needing cheap furniture, and then once you've gotten them in the store, you can upsell them with the funky little mushroom lamp. But if you thought that you could open a store just selling mushroom lamps, you'd be in a much worse situation market-wise, and you probably wouldn't have survived. And so you really need to tap into the active needs. Between the active need and the latent need, there's the passive need. There's people who are aware they have a problem, but they're not really motivated to go out and buy something or spend money in order to solve that problem. Laggards are often in a market with a latent need, but again, these are not a market. Yes, Laura, I agree. We all need a mushroom lamp. I will give you mine because I don't actually need this lamp. The passive need is something a lot of people try to go to market on the basis of. They think, well, people kind of know they have a problem, but they're not spending money because they haven't seen I've got an even better prop, the tiger face mask yet. And as soon as they see this, which is meant to help you sleep in a bright room, they will definitely purchase this product. But again, unless it's an impulse buy and you're meeting some other need, people don't run out and meet a passive need. What they meet is an active need. Customers have to be acutely aware that they have a problem and actively be shopping for solutions. Once you're established, your real customers are the people with an active need, people who know that they need a sleep mask in a cute animal print, or they need a water bottle. Here's a practical need that you might be able to meet, that's got a little sleeve that keeps it from breaking, and they need a glass water bottle. These are the sorts of things people have active needs for. They're aware that they need a solution to the problem, and they go looking around for it. But when you are launching a new product, you still are not golden if you're only meeting an active need, because again, you are new, you are unknown, and people, when they're shopping for solutions with just an active need, they will go looking for a proven solution. Instead, if you're a new product or a new service on the market, what you really want to find are called the visionary customers. These are the people whose need is an actual vision, which isn't like an Elon Musk type of vision where they're themselves a visionary. Instead, it's a situation where the customer is so concerned or inconvenienced that they've already created a makeshift solution. So if I need to sell animal face masks, I'm only going to be able to sell these to people who are already trying to add little cat ears to their existing face mask. If someone's already trying to make their own sleep mask with a cute little animal print by drawing on it with a magic marker, or putting on ears, they're my customer because they've already created their own makeshift solution. They have the bleeding head wound. They have a problem so severe that they're trying their own ways with duct tape to solve it themselves. And those are the first customers you need to find. Now, if you can't find those customers for the product or service that you're trying to sell, then you probably need to be in a different market. You need to find the market where there is enough visionary need, enough of a bleeding head wound, that you will be able to get enough early customers to sell your solution and get them to work with you. Now, another mistake and another pitfall that I see founders creating for themselves, frankly, is claiming that they're entering a completely new market. Nobody is doing what we're doing. And frankly, I see that even with mushroom lamps. Nobody is making mushroom lamps, people will say, and therefore we're creating a totally new market, the mushroom lamp market. But you know what a mushroom lamp is? It's a lamp. And so at the end of the day, and just a tiger sleep mask is still a sleep mask. And okay, I'll have a normal product here. Squirt and Mop is still a floor cleaner. At the end of the day, just because there's an element of novelty to your product does not mean that you're creating a new market. A new market is a market in which there is absolutely no solution whatsoever to people's problems. So unless people are sitting in the dark in a cave trying to rub two sticks together to create fire, you are not in a new market with a lamp of a novelty shape. Similarly, unless people are mopping their floors with just water, if you have a new floor cleaner, you're not creating a new market. Instead, you're entering an existing market with a better product, one that is better at currently solving the problem for the majority of users. The best you can hope for is that you are creating and entering a resegmented market. Now, a resegmented market is a situation where there is no product that's truly solving the problem for a specific type of customer. So for instance, what if somebody is a mushroom collector and there's no lamp out there that meets their needs? Then that's solving the problem for them. To give you a more concrete example, Squirt and Mop from Method is a resegmented market product because there is no hardwood floor cleaner out there, or there wasn't when Method was launched, that was for the organic, sustainable, high-end market. There were cheap hardwood floor cleaners like Pledge, but for someone who wanted to live a more sustainable lifestyle or who wanted a better scent than Lemon Pledge, this was the only product out there. So this is an example of resegmentation. They didn't invent floor cleaner, and they were also not entering an existing market because they weren't trying to take Pledge on head on by trying to just be a better version of Pledge. They are a better version, but only for somebody who's willing to pay twice as much for floor cleaner in order to have something that's healthier for the environment. And that is how you create a market for yourself. A new market rarely exists. And the single biggest mistake companies make is thinking that they are in a new market. And why is that a mistake? Well, because very few new markets exist. And if you think you're in a new market, you're not going to engage in proper customer segmentation. You're not going to think about, if this is an existing market and there are solutions out there, who is my product for? And so I know we're heading into the final 15, about 17 minutes of the session. I want to leave time for Q&A. So I want to talk a little bit about the characteristics of early adopters. Now, sometimes there's somebody who just enjoys having the newest and the latest and the greatest. They can be willing to take risks. They could be true risk takers. They tend to be curious, and they often are thought leaders, but that's only if they don't have a bleeding head wound problem. If someone has a bleeding head wound problem, like for instance, the reason they're using Method floor cleaner is not that they enjoy being, spending themselves into bankruptcy with floor cleaner, but because they're, let's say, allergic to the smell of Pledge, they have a bleeding head wound. They can't clean their floor without breaking out in hives, so then they have to go to an organic and sustainable solution. If you find somebody who has that bleeding head wound of a problem, in other words, they need your solution because nothing out there in the market is solving a really vital need for them, then they don't have to be people who typically are enjoying the newest or high risk takers, because what they really are is they're your early evangelists, because they know that you have a problem. They're seeking a solution to the point where they create one themselves. Like maybe they're really truly mopping their floor with something unsuitable and damaging to their floors because they're allergic to the solutions out there. And the problem for them is significant enough that they've committed resources to solving it. They're willing to pay an extra $5 in order to have a floor cleaner they're not allergic to. That's your early evangelist. That's the person you can build a sustainable product and solution for. Now that you've come up with who your customers are, let's come up with a couple of ideas and wrap it up and open it up to questions around how do you get your product to people. Now, first and foremost, you now need to think about what your channels are going to be. And a channel is simply the mechanism by which a product or service goes through to get to the customer. So for my company, we're a service company. My channel is that I give workshops like this. I have a newsletter. I'm active on social media. I'm active in professional organizations. That's the channel by which we get to our customer. If you are a floor cleaner brand, the channels through which you go are going to be your mass market merchandisers like your Target, but it could also be Whole Foods, where people with allergies or who want sustainable lifestyles are going to congregate. If you're selling this lamp, it could be a novelty product store, or in this case, it's through IKEA. You want to think about what channel is going to have the best ROI for the customer. Where are they going to get the most value of doing business with you? Could be a channel of necessity. For instance, most service businesses do have to market with good old-fashioned shoe leather and word of mouth. Or if you're in the grocery sector, you really have to deal with the grocery chains. But if you have an opportunity to pick and choose your channels, you want to find out what channels are going to be the most efficient and going to deliver the most value add. So for instance, if I sell my floor cleaner direct to the consumer, I might be able to throw in a mop with this, whereas I wouldn't be able to do that through Whole Foods. So the consumer might be willing to do business directly with me because the channel gives them the most value adds. It's also most efficient for me because I don't have to deal with the retail markup, and that's going to give me the best margins for my company. Now, some channels are going to give you the best margins. Some are going to give the best ROI and value adds to the consumer. Some are going to be the most efficient. If it's floor cleaner, the most efficient is going to be the supermarket. But they're all going to have pluses and minuses, and you really want to think about which channels are the most effective for my product or my service. So that's it in a nutshell for coming up with the right way to market your product. First and foremost, you're looking for the consumer with the bleeding head wound. You're looking for the person who has the biggest problem, and then you want to segment who your customers are according to that. And then finally, I want to conclude with one final thought. Again, you want to come up with the channels that you can market to people on, and then you're going to ask yourself these few final questions. I know who my customers are now. So in other words, now, where are they? All right, can I find them in online communities, in-person communities like a farmer's market, online user groups, social media, the way I'm finding a lot of my customers, conferences? Identify the specific places where you can meet those early evangelist customers. Then be realistic with yourself. Who do we need to and what do we need to compete with to win them? Is it other products? Is it doing nothing? Is it simply maintaining the status quo of I'll just clean my floor with olive oil or something? What am I competing with to win them? It's not just necessarily another product or service. It could be simply people continuing to create their own solutions. Then think about how much people can afford, but build in profit from the beginning and have a well thought out pricing model. You can seldom ever bootstrap a company by selling your product at a loss. So don't sell yourself short. Maybe you have to go into free samples or a freemium model, but make sure you're making a fair margin from the beginning. And if customers that you've identified can't provide that margin to you, find other customers. Then decide what your customer's relationship is to the market that you're entering into. Are they brand loyal? In other words, they're always going to be buying Pledge. Are they cost driven, in which case they can't afford method cleaning products? In those cases, find new customers. Are they new to the market? For instance, they're not in the floor cleaner market at all right now because they're allergic to the offerings. Have they become disengaged? Can we bring in customers who right now are not participating? Because then you're engaging in what Clayton Christensen, the late great professor of business, called disruptive innovation. You're bringing people into a market who weren't participating in it to begin with. Then think about, as we just talked about, what is the channel or relationship that makes sense to them? And finally, think about, are you going to have people engage with you directly, or do you need to find a partner and engage through them? If you do all of these things, you need to do this before you do branding, before you do any positioning, before you have a fancy logo. And this is how you set your product up for success, and you set yourself up for successful customer acquisition. So that's the quick tour of finding your first customers. And now I'm really happy to open it up to any questions. Have I put you to sleep? Have you run off to put your little tiger mask on?
Oh, ma'am.
All right, Laura, go for it.
Well, thank you very much for this. This was very valuable, and it gave me a lot to think about. However, there's an old Steve Martin gag where he's talking about how to be a millionaire, and he says, well, first you make $1 million, and then, so there's a lot of work I need to do and a lot of study I need to do in order to find out where to find my customers. I have some ideas, but they're just assumptions at this point. So the question would be, for a service provider such as myself, where I have some ideas of what the customer base might be, but no definite things, where do you think a nice place to start would be to figure out where to find my customers?
I think what you want to do is network. And I think the age of Zoom is actually the perfect time to do that, because you can hit 5 events in one night if you have to, versus running around town. Talk to people you trust in your personal network, run the idea by them, and then, ask them, who do you think could benefit from this, who I could talk to, or just who do you think I should talk to about this? And one person will refer you to another. I want to really preface it with the fact that that's what I did, and I still ended up getting led down the wrong path. So, because people will tell you, oh, this is a great idea, of course I'd pay $200 for it, and then they don't. So validate your idea for a month or two, but then throw something out on the market and see who bites. Because you don't want to spin your wheels in customer discovery for a non-physical product for too long, because the advantage of a service is, you know what, if it doesn't fly, I didn't make any of them. So just get validation in the market as soon as you possibly can. I think that's going to help you the most. But again, ask your network, go to networking events, get connected with people.
Thank you. That's some excellent advice.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So what happens if the best way that you've identified to find your customers, or like your first set, your bleeding head customers, are like small groups of people, like maybe like groups of like 5 people that meet at a time, like a book club type situation? Mm-hmm. How do you get around that? Because like, it's not really realistic to be going to a book club of 5 people for every new 5 people you add, you know?
I think there's the community part of the slide that I talked about would be a great place for you to go with that. So there are communities where book club people gather, like Goodreads, for instance. Mm-hmm. There are social media communities for people who are book lovers. So you don't want to necessarily spend a lot of time speaking to individual book clubs, but you want to connect with book lovers. That said, you probably do need, at the early stages of your progress, to connect with some actual book clubs. Like, you are going to have to start visiting some book clubs, but to make it more efficient, you also can reach them on social media. But you know, nothing beats that retail relationship, that direct relationship with those first few customers.
But a lot of like the online social media sites have like rules against promoting businesses.
Exactly. So that's why you follow inbound marketing, which is not about promotion. It's about engagement. So you don't want to promote. I mean, for the past 15 years, I've been preaching marketing isn't about promotion anymore. It can be, but what you're really doing, it's called inbound marketing. And I strongly recommend, I'm going to put it in the chat, to take a look at the blog of a company, a local company called HubSpot, which is the pioneer in inbound marketing. And in fact, they wrote a book about it. It's about listening to customers and engaging with them through conversation and giving them useful information that happens to have your name in it. So you could create an infographic around how to run an effective book club meeting. Even some groups will not allow that. But rather than saying, hey, buy my product for book clubs, you're giving them useful information, like these webinars that I do like every week almost. You're giving people useful information, and then when they need what you're solving the bleeding head wound for, they know about you. And that's far more powerful than doing any kind of promotion. It's still going to be the case that there are going to be groups that will not allow you to be there for any commercial purpose. But that's really going to be the minority, and that's why inbound marketing has taken the place of aggressive advertising-based marketing for a lot of organizations. And word of mouth also is going to be very strong for you until you've got that traction. There's no way around it. Like there's no way to blast this out to like 10,000 people and have them buy from you without like a lot of money and a strong brand behind you. So it's one step in front of the other. And that's why you need to plan on a product taking a few months to years to take off to the point where it's like a very large business where you can carry employees, unless you can get venture funding.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, and take a look at the HubSpot blog. I highly recommend it. Amanda, you're up next.
Hello.
Hello.
I would like to ask, when it comes to networking, what are the most important skills do you need to develop in order to develop a strong network for yourself?
Really great question. It goes back again to listening and bringing value. Yes, great point from Bajanka in the chat. If you're a Brandeis startup founder, you get 90% off of HubSpot as well. So take a look at that. Networking really, it's again about bringing value and being able to listen. If it's face-to-face networking as a person, again, listening and understanding what people need, being a good connector, being able to be a good person to bounce ideas off of, or who can bring ideas to the table is essential. If you're networking as your brand, bringing value and bringing valuable content becomes really, really important.
Thank you.
Of course. I think we have time for one or two more quick questions. Go for it, Laura.
Okay, if nobody else is going to talk, do you have a sense of when a loss leader becomes more of a revenue bleeder? You mentioned that you give these free webinars every week. One of my loss leaders last year was giving free speeches, and it didn't result in this influx of newsletter readers or customers that I thought it would. And although I enjoyed traveling to places to talk, it felt like a waste of time. Do you have a sense of when it's time to cut the cord on things that aren't producing revenue?
The minute you start to suspect that it's not producing any revenue. The best advice I have is cut things off before they're like, oh, like that. Like once you're at the stage, it's too late. Trust me, boy, have we ever, we've done a few doozies, not just, so with the webinars, even if we don't get business out of each and every one, we get enough where it's like, it's not a big deal to do one of these. It's fine. It's comfortable. It's easy to do. if it starts to be a real pain in the neck and you're not getting any business around it, the minute you get that sense, take a step back and try maybe one or two more, but then just cut it loose before it becomes, you know, it kind of becomes a bleeding head wound of the worst kind. Yeah,
Well put.
we tried Google ads. That was our bleeding head wound. We tried, like, there was, I'll give you a mini case study, just like the 2-second case, 10-second case study. There was a platform for building websites called Drupal Gardens that was a watered down version of the popular web content management system Drupal, and it was discontinued by the manufacturer. And we were convinced that a lot of people with Drupal Garden sites would pay us to then rebuild their site on a platform that wasn't going away. And so we paid a few $1,000s in Google ads to get people to come to our website that we would migrate their site off of Drupal Gardens. But what turned out was that all of those people who still had a site on this legacy platform had no money because it was a free platform. And so we got inquiries from people with no money at all. And we spent like a lot of money off of that. And so I just pulled the plug like right there. These are not our customers. They're too broke. And so I'm very sorry about even spending a couple grand on that. It was not a good move. So that's my recommendation right there. All right, so we're kind of at time. It is 6:29. I hope you guys have had some fun with this. The slides, I'm going to send out these slides to everybody who in the Slack channel. And hi, Raj, do you have a question or are you just applauding?
Just applauding.
Just applauding. Okay, so I've actually cut to my time. That's my personal win for the week. I will, absolutely, you're very welcome. I will send out those slides to everybody who was on this call. We have your email address. So if you registered, you will get the slides. And I'll also include the link to the HubSpot blog and a couple of other interesting resources that I think you might find useful in your quest to get customers. But give yourself a round of applause for taking the plunge to be an entrepreneur. It is not easy. Yes, round of applause. It's not easy. You're very courageous to be doing that. And you will succeed because you have the gumption to succeed. And I firmly believe that. And with that, we're at time. I'm happy to stick around for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to chat or has questions. But the slides will be forthcoming. And thank you, everybody, for coming out. I hope you learned something and had a nice evening.
Thanks so much, Christina. I learned a lot.
Take care.
Thank you, Christina. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.